They never told you this part. They never warned you that the moment you start asking why your life feels heavier than others, you might already be standing on holy ground. Because here's a shocking truth most people are not ready to hear. God does not choose the strongest, the most confident, or the most admired. He often chooses the ones who are confused, exhausted, overlooked, and quietly breaking behind closed doors. And if that unsettles you, then that is a good start. Because comfort was never the gateway to calling. Let me ask you something, and don't answer it quickly. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered why things seem harder for you than for others? Why people with less depth move faster, get celebrated sooner, and seem untouched by the weight you carry? Why obedience feels costly, while compromise seems rewarded everywhere you look? Here's the part no one prepares you for. God does not choose people the way the world does. The world chooses charisma. God chooses character. The world chooses talent. God chooses trustworthiness. The world looks for visibility. God looks for availability. Being called is common. Being chosen is costly. Many hear God's voice. Few stay when obedience starts stripping things away. Many want purpose, but not many are willing to be reshaped by it. And if something inside you feels exposed right now, if this feels less like inspiration and more like recognition, that's not coincidence. That's alignment. Because this message is not here to entertain you. It's here to confront something deep inside you that's been forming quietly for a long time. God chooses people in 5 ways that almost never make sense to the world. And if you listen carefully, you will recognize yourself in at least one of them. God chooses the broken, not the polished. This is where most people misunderstand divine selection. They assume God looks for perfection, stability, confidence, and strength. But over and over again, he reaches for the ones who have been cracked open by life. The ones who have felt disappointment so deeply that it changed the way they move through the world. The ones who lost someone they thought they couldn't live without and somehow kept breathing anyway. Brokenness does something success never can. It strips illusion. It removes arrogance. It teaches humility without needing explanation. When you've been broken, you stop pretending. You stop performing. You stop hiding behind image. You become honest. Not because you're brave, but because you're tired pretending you're not wounded. And that honesty, that's sacred ground. God is not drawn to polish. He is drawn to surrender. Broken people know how to lean instead of control. They know how to listen instead of demand. They know how to hold pain without hardening. And that kind of heart can be trusted with real influence. But hear this clearly. God chooses the broken, not the bitter. There is a difference. Brokenness that humbles draws heaven close. Brokenness that hardens builds walls even God won't force his way through. Pain can either soften you or seal you shut. The difference is surrender. Some of you wonder why healing took so long, why the process was slow and the silence heavy, why God didn't rescue you sooner. But what if he wasn't delaying? What if he was deepening you? Fragile vessels can't carry eternal weight. God was removing what couldn't survive the calling ahead. If you're still standing, still believing, still whispering prayers through clenched teeth, that wasn't weakness. That was training. And if you feel like life broke you open instead of breaking you apart, it's because God needed room to work inside you. Your wounds did not disqualify you. They qualified you. Then there are those God chooses not because they shine, but because they obey. Obedience is rarely glamorous. It's often quiet, misunderstood, and deeply inconvenient. The world celebrates visibility. God rewards alignment. Obedience is usually invisible before it is impactful. It happens in moments no one applauds, in decisions no one notices, in sacrifices that look foolish to everyone else. Obedience costs something every time. Sometimes it costs relationships, sometimes comfort, sometimes approval, and sometimes it costs a version of yourself you thought you were supposed to be. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. Partial obedience is still resistance. And many people miss their moment not because they didn't hear God, but because they didn't like what he said. There are things God asked you to walk away from that still look good. There were moments he asked you to speak when silence would have protected you. Times he asked you to stay when leaving would have been easier. And every time you chose obedience, even shaking, something unseen was being built inside you. Obedience sharpens discernment. It strengthens spiritual authority. It deepens trust. It teaches your spirit to recognize God's voice over your own fear. And often, the more obedient you become, the less applause you receive. Because obedience threatens comfort, especially in people who prefer convenience over truth. If obedience has cost you friendships, popularity, or applause, you are not losing. You are being entrusted. God does not give heavy assignments to people addicted to approval. Then there are those God chooses not because they are qualified, but because they are available. This one unsettles people. We are taught to prepare endlessly, to become more, to master everything before stepping forward. But God does not wait for perfection. He waits for willingness. Availability says, I don't know how, but I'll go. Availability says, I'm afraid, but I'm here. Availability says, I don't understand, but I trust you. Overqualification often produces control. Availability produces dependence. And God moves through those who leave room for Him to move. Some of you have delayed your obedience because you felt unready. You thought you needed more clarity, more confidence, more confirmation. But God was waiting for your yes, not your resume. He does not ask for mastery. He asks for surrender. If you ever felt pulled towards something that scared you, something you didn't feel equipped for, something that required faith instead of certainty, that wasn't pressure. That was purpose knocking quietly. God doesn't empower prepared. He prepares the willing. Then there are those God chooses through rejection. This one hurts the most because rejection feels personal. It feels like proof you weren't enough. It feels like doors slamming without explanation. It feels like watching others chosen while you're left behind, wondering what you did wrong. But rejection is often protection in disguise. What people reject, God often reserves. What others overlook, God hides for later. When you're rejected, something powerful happens. Your identity stops depending on applause. Your worth detaches from validation. You learn to listen for God's voice instead of chasing approval. Rejection strips away distractions. It forces depth. It forces honesty. It teaches you to stand alone with God when no one else is clapping. If everyone had access to you, your calling would be diluted. If everyone approved of you, your character wouldn't be refined. Sometimes God hides you because your assignment is fragile in its early stages. You weren't rejected because you were wrong. You were rejected because you were early. And finally, God chooses the faithful, not the flashy. Faithfulness doesn't trend. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't impress crowds. It shows up quietly, consistently, long after enthusiasm fades. Faithful people keep showing up when it's boring, when no one notices, when progress is slow, when prayers feel unanswered, when results lag behind effort. Faithfulness is not loud, but it is powerful. It builds depth. It builds endurance. It builds trust. God is not looking for moments of passion. He is looking for patterns of devotion. He is not impressed by intensity. He is moved by consistency. Many want influence, but few want longevity. Many want impact, but few want endurance. God entrusts weight to those who have proven they can carry it without dropping it when it gets heavy. If your journey feels long, if obedience feels repetitive, if faith feels quiet rather than exciting, you are not behind. You are being formed. Flash fades. Faithfulness lasts. And now, here is the part most people miss. God rarely shapes someone in just one of these ways. He layers them. He breaks, teaches, humbles, stretches, and refines. He prepares in silence before revealing in public. He trains in obscurity before entrusting influence. If this message feels uncomfortably accurate, it's because something in you recognizes itself here. Not because you're special in the world's eyes, but because you're being shaped for something that requires depth. Being chosen is not about elevation. It's about responsibility. It's about becoming someone who can carry weight without losing humility. You may still feel unsure, still in process, still unfinished. That does not disqualify you. That confirms it. God doesn't abandon what He begins. So here's the question that remains unanswered, the one you must sit with long after this ends. Will you keep saying yes when obedience costs you comfort? Will you keep trusting when the path stays unclear? Will you keep walking when recognition never comes? Because if you will, then understand this. You were never overlooked. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared. And the God who started this work in you is not finished yet.